Chapter 5.
Give me a status report. I want a full rundown of everything that happened while I was in my office.
Charles closed the door behind him as he walked into the room. He's stable, life signs are good. Nothing to tell us that the treatment has gone wrong. So far, his body actually seems to be accepting it.
Accepting it? Wasn't he one of the candidates that were labeled ineligible after the first test?
Not precisely. We did test the product on him, and the body did have a bad response. However, after scanning again, we discovered that he didn't entirely reject it like we thought. Some of the serum was working the way it's meant to. The scientist turned from the observation window to glance at the man beside him.
Well done, Doctor. Keep up the good work.
Will do, sir. A slap on the back was given to the man, and Charles turned and walked up to the door which led to the laboratory. He was going to study his best student, up close and personal. His eyes refocused on the objects inside the hall as he came out of the memory that seemed to play so long inside his mind. It had taken its toll on Jack, and when he was fully conscious and aware of his body again, he had slid down the wall and dropped the flashlight, causing it to roll away, and after a few seconds, come to settle at the end of the hallway, the beam facing into the unknown. He felt that he couldn't breathe right. It seemed as though his lungs had decided to start to shut down on him, simulating the feeling of a large amount of weight on his chest. It felt as if a python had wrapped itself around him and was squeezing tighter as time went on, waiting until the moment he gave up, his body went limp and he was dead. At that point, he would be its next meal. It would eat his body, one chunk at a time. He would be digested, and then the snake would move on, wanting to find bigger and better things that it could eat away its day on. His head was hanging in a face-down position, staring into the darkness where the carpet should have been. His eyes were shut, and his body was in a status of ragdoll syndrome. Although his mind was still there, groggy as it was, but the feeling was like that's all he was. Just a brain floating in the never-ending chasm of space, destined to live out its life in complete and utter silence. He had a thought then. It was a cloudy haze of a thought, and deep in the back of his mind, but it was there nonetheless.
Is this what those people felt like when they went into those giant isolation tanks?
He had seen the movie Altered States as a child, and had always wondered if visions like the ones Edward Jessup saw would really happen if a person was put into a position like that, or was it simply Hollywood garbage? The way he was now, he felt like this was the closest he would ever get to the actual feeling of an isolation tank, and that maybe the visions weren't true. How would he know? He was just in the darkness, and he was having a vision of what he thought might have been a lost memory. Something his mind was keeping from him until he chose to access it. This whole situation he was living was like a vision. He thought if he kept diving through his memory, and coming back into this world frequently enough, he would no longer be able to tell what was a memory, and which was the present day. He would have to deal with each world as its events unfolded, do what he had to in one world, and emerge into the other. In the end, the job had to be done, and that was all there was to it. As his mind came back, it seemed to respond slowly, like a faulty light. Such as if a man walks into a workshop and flicks the switches of old light bulbs. Each light takes a few seconds to turn on, and then finally doing the job it was meant to do. Almost as if it was remembering that providing the light was its job in life, the sole reason it was created. He opened his eyes slowly. At first, The darkness he was staring at was too intense to tell the difference between the back of his eyelids and the world beyond. But as he turned his head and spotted the flashlight, he knew he was back in the world of the living, the world of the conscious, the world that had ended. Pushing himself off the wall and into a crawling position, he made his way towards the flashlight and picked it up, scanning the hallway for anything that had gone astray when he was in the other place. He was coming to think of it as the world of Cinema Jack. That name was appropriate because of the things he saw. It was him on the screen, no doubt, but because he couldn't remember doing those things, it was like he was watching an action movie. What would happen around the next corner? Monsters? Criminals? Would he get shot? Would he make it out alive? Find out in the adventures of Cinema Jack 3, The Revenge of the Memory. Remembering that world and everything in it suddenly made him think about the knife. It hadn't been in his hand when he woke up, and he hadn't seen it when he had been scanning the room only moments before.
Where is it? Where's the knife? If I don't have that knife, I can't defend myself.
And then the panic ceased. It was lying on the ground beside the place he had been before. Walking over, he bent down and picked it up. The darkness was getting to him, and he was letting it invade his thoughts. Composing himself and taking a deep breath, he turned back around to face where he had to go.
Come on, man. Pull it together. You're a detective, for God's sake. You have faced murderers. You've been in shootouts. You have had your life threatened on a daily basis. Just because you are in a world where you're alone does not make any difference. You just have to be more careful, that's all. Focus, Jack. Focus. Don't lose track of the goal here.
But what was the goal? He had searched inside his mind to find out if the prediction of the creatures outside being invisible was either true or false. In the vision, he saw he had been running away with the girl. They had been defending themselves. But did he see them? Did he see the monsters that whisper? In those few seconds when Cinema Jack had raised the rifle to fire at the thing coming through the haze, had he seen anything? Even an outline would do. He pulled up that one frame of memory in his mind, looking through the sights of the rifle, the finger around the trigger. What was beyond the rifle? There was an outline of something. It was like looking at it through a dim light, like trying to see the road through the headlights in a thick fog, but he saw it. A figure walking towards Cinema Jack. He sighed and felt the weight of the world being lifted off his shoulders. At that moment, the confirmation was sound. He chuckled at himself.
Of course the creatures weren't invisible. Nothing is invisible. It's impossible. Nothing has a power like that. Don't make that same mistake again. You're here, and it's the end of the world. It may be a bit lonely, but there's no invisible creatures outside. You haven't seen them because you simply haven't been looking in the right places. That's all. Get a hold of yourself.
Jack smiled, and slowly turned in the direction which would lead him onwards. Taking a step forward, he walked on, feeling for the first time since he put the barrel of the .44 in his mouth that he was in control of his own destiny.